Welcome back, everybody. It's Smackworth here, bringing you yet another Halo speedrunning video for Combat Evolved. Legendary, of course. Today I'm bringing you two Betrayals, which is definitely the most broken, most wild speedrunning level in this game, and in my opinion, the hardest mission in this whole game, even though there's almost zero combat, because as you'll see in a second, we're just gonna skip it all. So here is the little bit of combat that is in this game, this hallway where the Sentinels and the Covenant are fighting each other. And the reason I'm not going to kill all the Covenant here is because if you kill too many, then another wave is going to spawn. And so the idea is to kind of run through that hallway without attracting too much attention so that they fight each other and then you take out the Sentinels. And here I'm going to do a trick where I hit the button twice with a very precise timing in order to despawn 99% of the enemies in this next section. So only 4 enemies spawned there, and I just took them out with 2 nades, no problem. And none of the other enemies in this section spawned because I hit that button twice in a very precise timing. And now I'm gonna just slide all the way down to the bottom and throw some sky nades here to kind of boost this Banshee closer to me. And my plasma grenade missed, but that's okay because the Banshee's still closer than it was before. And so we just flip it over and get in it, and that really only saves probably like a second or two, but like I said, there's no more combat in this level, so you really don't need the nades for anything, so I figure I just might as well just throw them at the Banshee, move it a little bit closer to me, and move on. And now we actually do have to go back and hit that button again to spawn in all these enemies that were supposed to spawn in before, and that will allow us to progress through the level normally. And so now we're going to progress through the level, like I said, how the game developers intended, and we're going to go to this next generator room. There's a couple of enemies that I just kind of run over with my Banshee. He decided not to die, so I have to blast him with my shotgun. Being very careful not to shoot my Banshee because it's one shot. So now we're going to do this first generator like normal, and this is pretty much where the normal side of this level comes to an end. We're gonna hit this generator and we set our first Banshee up in the hallway in order to do a trick. So the goal is to get out of bounds. We're gonna use the Banshee to our advantage by flying it up into the ceiling, and the Banshee will kind of just eject us, and when it ejects us, after we do a very specific lineup, then we just go flying through the ceiling. And now I'm setting up the second Banshee here, and so that way I can get inside of that second Banshee while I'm out of bounds. So boom, I just flung myself out of bounds. We call it the Banshee fling, and I go over here just to load in part of the level so that I can progress. And I'm out of bounds right now. I have to do a very specific lineup and jump to land kind of in between inbound and out of bounds. So that way I can grab the Banshee while I'm still out of bounds. And so yeah, now I get in that second Banshee and I'm completely out of bounds. I can go through all of these walls and everything, but the only thing about it is that you still have to hit specific triggers that the game developers put in the game, intending for Master Chief to walk through certain triggers. So there's like invisible boxes throughout the level, and Master Chief has to walk through these invisible boxes in order to progress the game. You have to walk through each of these triggers in order, and well, since we're out of bounds in a Banshee, we're actually flying through the triggers, but we still have to do them in order. And the thing about it is that they're invisible, and there's about 30 of them, and so I'm flying through the map, hitting all these invisible triggers that you just kind of have to know where they are just by studying the game. I used a guide, a very helpful guide by a guy named Nervy Destroyer. So shout outs to him for making an amazing guide for this trick. The trick that we call Bool, B-O-O-L, which stands for Banshee out of level. And so now right now I'm just hitting triggers, and every time you see me stop randomly, that's because I'm stopping in a invisible trigger in order to progress the level. And I'm hitting them all in order, and there's really no way for you to know if you're hitting them or not. But there are going to be a few visual indicators here in a moment that will tell me if I've hit all the triggers in order so far. And that will tell me basically if I've failed or succeeded in hitting these triggers so far. So that's pretty much the hard part in terms of hitting triggers. Right now there's going to be an explosion right there. Boom. So that explosion only happens if you've hit every trigger so far in order, which I have because I saw the explosion, so I know that I'm doing the trick right so far. And so now you actually have to load in some more sections of the map, but the only way to do that is to kind of dip your toes inside the level for a second. And so I have to line up my Banshee in a very specific spot here, and I'm going to get out of the Banshee and get back in. Yep, so I dip my toes back in the map for just a second while keeping my Banshee outside of bounds. And if I make one wrong move there, my Banshee will kind of get sucked back in bounds. And so that's why I'm being very careful with how I line it up, because the trick is just completely done. The level would just be completely over if my Banshee goes back inside of bounds. And all it takes is one tiny slip up for your Banshee to go back into bounds. So I'm being very careful here. If you've ever watched a really good player, very experienced player do this level, they kind of just fly through everything and they're not careful at all because, I mean, they're just way better at it. But I'm being very careful because, you know, I'm not trying to break the world record or anything. I'm just trying to get like a respectable time. And so, yeah, I'm being very careful, making sure I hit every trigger and making sure I'm not going to bring my Banshee inbounds on accident. There are certain sections that you just have to know about, that if your Banshee touches, you get sucked back into bounds. So you have to be careful about that. And now I just have a few more triggers to hit. As you can see, you can just fly through all these cliffs and everything, and you can actually fly infinitely in any direction. Like you can kind of just get trapped in the void, and so you have to really keep track of where you are and kind of have a mental map of where to go, because I mean, if you make one wrong turn, you can fly infinitely in any direction, and then boom, your level is over. And since you're like completely breaking the game here, you don't get checkpoints. So the only checkpoint we had was way before we even did the Banshee fling. So if you mess this up and have to revert back to your last checkpoint, you've lost like multiple minutes, like 2, 3, 4 minutes, even 5 minutes in a worst case scenario. And now we're going to do one final load here where we have to dip our toes back in bounds for just a second. And this is the scariest one because it's the third and final load that I'm going to do. So I'm going to make sure I line up perfectly. I can kind of use some of these textures down here to line up my Banshee with my cursor. Well, not my cursor. I'm on controller, so what would you call it? Crosshair, I guess, the Banshee crosshair. And boom, I dip my toes back in, and now we just have a few more things to do. So now I'm gonna kind of just fly across the whole level. I'm kind of flying in the void right now. As you can see, there's almost no visual indicators of where I am. I've just studied this level enough and played it enough to know exactly where to go. And you can kind of use this waypoint as an indicator of which way to go, but you can pretty easily get lost. It happened to me a couple of times where I just kind of get lost in the void and then my run is over. And here's another one of those parts where you just kind of have to trust yourself, trust your muscle memory, and fly into the void in order to progress to the next part. And so I'm just kind of holding forward and trusting myself. And now we're finally going to go back into bounds, and there you go. The bool trick is over. I hit all of the triggers out of bounds with my Banshee that I possibly could. And now we have to do yet another trick This is another reason why this level is so hard, because now we're doing another trick that's called Banshee through Broken Door. And you can kind of... It looks way harder. I mean, it looks way easier than it is. That's actually a really hard trick. At least for me. You kind of... you kind of just slide your Banshee through there. Like, you use very precise lineups. And that guy scared the hell out of me because I was on really good pace here, and then that dude came out of nowhere and slapped me in the back and actually like scared the shit out of me, and I thought like I was about to get swarmed. But now I'm hitting a few more triggers right there. I opened the door and then went back to hit a trigger that spawns in a ton of flood. That's the safest way to do it, instead of spawning the flood in and then opening the door and waiting for the door. I kind of do it in reverse order. Open the door and then go hit the trigger. So I'm not supposed to have a Banshee here. Pretty much that's the theme for the whole level, is just getting your Banshee where it's not supposed to be. And so now, in order to progress to the next section of the level, I have to kill 5 flood. So this is a safe way of killing all 5 flood. People who are really, really good at this game just kind of run 5 flood over with their Banshee and don't worry about it. But again, I'm playing it really safe. I'm just trying to get a respectable time, and so I do a safe route in which you get out of the Banshee, throw some nades at some flood that you know exactly where they're going to spawn. But there's really no risk of getting shot by enemies and stuff. And this Banshee is actually scaring the hell out of me because he is chasing me all over the place. And this Banshee usually won't chase you that far, but I guess this one was just bloodthirsty and like really wanted to kill me. And so now we're gonna jump out of our Banshee and hit the final section of the level here. And right now I am feeling pretty good because this was my best time I ever gotten. I mean, not the cleanest 2 betrayals ever, but I hit all my tricks in a row without dying, and that's really the most important part. So there you go. There's 2 betrayals. Long mission, hard mission. To me, that's the hardest trick, hardest level in the entire game, even though there's no combat, which is kind of crazy. But there you have it. There's 2 betrayals, guys. All right. The next is Keys, the easiest level in the whole game. We'll see you there. Peace.